We ask that these be limited to 3 minutes each. We're happy to receive any written statements you may have. Please understand that criticisms of individual staff members are not allowed during this time, but should you wish to file a complaint about an individual, we have a process for receiving and considering these. Also, the committee does not respond directly to public comments or engage in verbal exchanges during this time. Our policy is to listen to your statement or question at the moment, and then either provide you with a response to your inquiry after it has been looked into, or make your topic a future agenda item so that more information can be provided to everyone. And on that note, welcome to visitors. And this is our opportunity for public participation, if anyone would so like to participate. Okay, thank you. Important events, I believe, are our next.
Sorry, I'm there.
Okay, do it.
August 6th is summer story time at Hillcrest at 11 a.m. And same thing on August 13th, same place, same time.
Any additional? Any others, Jen?
I just want to tell people that I attended the first 2 story times, and they were well attended, and the stories read in English and Spanish, and they do a craft, go on the playground, and then head over to Sheffield to participate in the free lunch program. And I also attended a Mass Association of School Committee training on this past Friday and Saturday on the topic of equity. So I'll be meeting with Superintendent and Jane to discuss things that we might want to add to the agenda and get everybody some more information on that. So more to share soon.
Thank you. Anything else anyone has? All right, thank you. It's summertime, we wouldn't have a student rep report anyway. And anything from Irving, Teresa?
No, the school committee is not meeting again in Irving until late August, early September.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Can we try that?
Yes, okay, could we? Maybe I should
I wanna
call,
be on
I should
that.
chat with them and see how they manage
Don't you
that.
dare leave us, Sabrina.
I think everybody here would be interested in knowing how that works. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. Superintendent's report is next.
Oh, okay. I've got about 8 items here. First one is, I am pleased to announce that the district has recently hired a new secondary assistant principal, Mr. Thomas Gaffigan. Tom served as assistant high school principal in Greenfield for 5 years, and prior to that, he was a social studies teacher at Pioneer Valley Regional School for 7 years. Mr. Gaffigan comes highly recommended as a builder of positive school culture and an administrator talented at establishing close and effective relationships with students and staff. And we look forward to his joining us and bringing that skill set beginning on August 1st. On a related note, Mike Dupree has completed his assignment as interim secondary level assistant principal this past spring, and now he's been hired as one of our 2 secondary level deans of students. And with the resignation of Rebecca Zuckley, our former dean, we now have begun a search for the second dean of students position. I'm also pleased to announce the appointment of our first family engagement coordinator, who will be Stacy Langneck. Stacy was one of several highly qualified candidates for the position, but she was by far the most qualified in terms of related work experience and having not just a deep knowledge of the community, but a strong desire to help connect our families with schools. Stacy's coming to us after having been the coordinator for the Salison Project program in Greenfield and the coordinator for the Children's Advocacy Center, also of Greenfield. And she will begin work just in time to attend the next District Equity Steering Committee meeting on Friday, August 9th, where she will be a member of that committee. Next item, no heckling. Last week, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education announced that it has decided to discontinue the Alternative Structured Learning Day program, otherwise known as Blizzard Bags, and so we are benefiting from having delayed conversation about that topic. So, Anyway, we can talk about that more if you want to another time. Next item, on Thursday, July 11th, over 30 district administrators, faculty, and 3 school committee members, Jane, Haley, and Jennifer, participated in a one-day training held at the Dining Commons of GCC. The training was called Social Justice Teaching 101, and it introduced us to the 4 sets of grade range standards related to the components of social justice learning as they see them. Those components are identity, diversity, justice, and action. Both the content and the approach to this work was really well received by everybody, and we really, there's a lot of folks looking forward to making use of the standards and the lesson plans and the podcasts and a whole range of resources that Teaching Tolerance provides. By the way, we're the first school district in Massachusetts to take these guys up on this training. And they were headed to Boston later in the summertime, and I'd like to, I'm sure that other school districts will start to make use of what they have to offer soon.
Will we hear from Jane, Haley, and Jennifer? I'd love to hear what you guys had to say about it. You don't have to now. You can get
We
your
could,
thoughts together.
yes, we could at another meeting, be happy to.
Okay.
It's,
Just like-
and their website has a lot of information. Maybe we can include
maybe
that
put
Yeah, that'd be great.
in our little report.
Maybe we want to put it like on the agenda as an item to.
Sure.
It was great. It was really great.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. All right, next item, the district's new Equity Steering Committee held its first meeting, a day-long gathering on June 25th in our PD lab and central office. And I wanted to thank all of those who've begun this work on behalf of our students and particularly the secondary school community. And I also wanted to give a particular shout out to Jen Audley, although she never likes it when I do that, for spending many hours behind the scenes coordinating all kinds of logistical stuff from food to stipends to childcare. And it took a lot of time, but it was a really nice start for the work of that committee. And I mentioned earlier that committee will meet, its first regular monthly meeting will be Friday, August 9th. And let's see what else. Last year, I shared with you the results of school climate and culture surveys taken by students who took the 2018 MCAS test. I'm very anxious to get those results. I've been emailing somebody from DESE about that, and they said later in the summer they think they will have those school climate results for us, and that will allow us to do a 2-year comparison and also to compare the DESE, the MCAS survey results with our own in-house survey and also against the teen health survey that our kids take. So we'll have 3 sets of kind of social and emotional feedback from students that we can be looking at. Also, late in the game, not until after your packets were out, was I able to do some work on pulling together strands of thinking about NEASC. I did that on Sunday, and that's I sent that with my report, and now it's been delivered to you as well. So that's my overall report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? Jen?
I had a couple of questions about the hiring. Were you able to work with the new principal in the hiring process for the assistant principal and Medina students? Just so everybody
Yes.
kind of has a relationship started
Yes,
and ready
absolutely.
to go.
It was really Joni's decision on the final decision on who the assistant principal was. We kind of gave her the lay of the land and so on, but she was very active in that work. So it was nice that she was available to do that, because that should be her call.
And then I also, because the Blizzard bags seem to be stopped because of like an equity issue and an access issue, wondering after the first year of having the Chromebooks how that's working, and if we're having anyone with the concern of like not having internet at home or anything like that, if there's a way to kind of follow up on that.
So, we're not doing the Blizzard bag. This
Right.
is unrelated to
It's
Blizzard bags?
unrelated, but made me think of that,
Oh.
because they had reported that they stopped because of an access and an equity concern
Right.
with the Blizzard bags of taking the work home and not having access to, say, the internet. So I didn't know if any kids, any students or families were reporting that they weren't able to do their homework because of lack
Okay, I
of
see.
internet.
If there's
or
homework that
anything like
involves use of the Chromebooks, how
Right.
is that being managed?
Or
Right.
is that an issue? Are you-
I
you know,
don't
how to
have
do that?
a good off the top of my head.
Just made me think of it. I don't expect
Yeah.
you to have an answer
No,
right
we
now.
can get you one. I know the library's open after school,
Mhm.
but, Mr. Jour is here. He may have some information on how that goes. Although your folks, high schoolers don't all have Chromebooks of their own just yet. That's just middle school so far, so. I think we'll get back to you on that. That's a really good question, though.
Do you want, I can give some information. We are, I'm working with the tech director on if we are gonna give access to bringing them home and kind of making agreements around that, so the talk has been started on that, just so you guys know.
So they stay in the building now?
I'm sorry,
They stay in the building now?
correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, don't they go home with 7th and 8th graders?
No, no.
I've never seen one.
No.
No, they say, so we're looking at, this
Yeah.
is how we
Okay.
started that conversation, so I don't know where it's going, but
Okay,
it's on our radar.
thank you.
On the Blizzard bag business here, when was this, because I wasn't on the committee, when was this started? How long?
We never did.
No, I mean, but,
The state, perhaps 2
Well,
years ago?
there were some kind of rogue districts that started it about 3 or so years ago, and then it started to catch on.
mhm.
And the previous commissioner said, let's experiment, and so the last 2 years, it kind of really grew in rural areas in particular. So it's really only been for 2 years that it's been.
So it
in
wasn't
numbers.
something that was started by Desi,
No.
it was,
It
okay.
was kind of a homegrown thing, and they
Okay.
kind of said reluctantly, all right, we'll let you give it a go. And they gave 2 different sets of guidelines over time, and then with the new commissioners took a good look at it and had big concerns, I guess.
Okay, anything else? Thank you. Okay, Joanne, business and operations report, please.
Okay, we are starting to close out the fiscal 19 year, so a lot of purchase orders that need to be paid out, and payroll happens over the summer. And as we continue to work on closing that out, we'll see where our numbers land. But we will have a surplus this year that'll flow to E&D. So we'll be able to increase that E&D balance.
Excuse me, Joanne, what did you say the surplus was? I didn't have. If you
I
did,
didn't.
I didn't hear.
I didn't,
Okay,
because we're still working out the numbers.
okay.
So I don't want to get anyone excited about a potential number that doesn't, that isn't our end point. I'm showing our state aid numbers here in the chart, and the one number that stands out is the school choice tuition. So it looks like it's, you know, from the cherry sheet, it's way down. However, there was an error last year in the school choice expense side of $107,000, and so they're correcting it this year. So the school choice sending tuition would have been 1.59 million, and it looks like it's down at 1.48. So that's just showing what the number would have been had that 107 been in this year instead of last year. Last year looked really high because it was higher. The number was, had the 107 in it, and it shouldn't have had it in there.
And that was a DESI.
It was a DESI error that they corrected a year later.
Yeah.
You have June budget transfers in your packet. Those are for your information. And then I have one budget transfer for you to approve. And this is transferring the funds from our negotiable increases line to cover the CAF salaries associated with that settlement agreement. So this is a June transfer that's not on this list. We're doing it in June, so that way we can get those settlement agreement payments made out. They've actually been made with carryover money, but we just need to put the money in the right account for that. So I need your vote on the transfer.
So moved.
Okay, second. Mike moved, Heather seconded. Any discussion?
So that was a retroactive you're talking about?
Yes.
Going out, so you want to get this tied up in the last
Right.
year's?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, I don't want it showing in the current year
Mhm.
expenses.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Looks like unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, the fiscal 20 budget is in your packet. You can see the accounts line by line. All the accounts have been restructured, so the account numbers, account codes, and the object code, which is the second to last section of account numbers. You'll notice, for instance, if you look at the school committee section of those account numbers, which is the first box, the 01 means it's the general funds, 1110 means school committee, then the 600 would be other expenses for school committee. So that 600, that section of numbers is what's been restructured. So all of our counts should be according to that now. And so that's informational right now, just to see the budget. I also have at the end, if you go to the very end of that section, you'll see the general fund budget on page 10, the 19,932,858 in the first number column.
So it's not quite at the bottom of the
Nope,
paper?
it's not on the bottom.
More than 3/4 down?
Right, and then other numbers that we track in this budget would be our athletic revolving budget, where we pay some transportation. Our circuit breaker budget, which starts with the 41, in that we pay some tuitions from there. And then our school choice revolving account, which we pay some salaries from, and a tuition for a student that comes to us through school choice and is placed out of district. So the total budget that you see here is 21,144,000. And the only piece that doesn't line up with what you approve specifically is the athletic number that I put in there for you.
Any questions about that before we finish the report? Okay.
Okay, the Gill roof, we finally received our official notification from MSBA that we are not being invited into the program this year. So we can keep applying, and eventually they're gonna accept it because the roof will be old enough. But they keep changing the age of that roof.
Sorry, I'm too old to fix it.
Yeah. Banking resolutions, Cynthia will go through those with you, and then you're gonna need votes on those. We did hand out one correction, there was a typo on it, so we fixed that before it gets signed. The student activity audit is the next item, and so the audit report is in your packet. Put it in your packet here. And also in your packet is the updated student activity guidelines. And so one of the items that the audit brought up is that they would like you to vote on those. So this could be your first read, and then it would be a vote, and it should be part of our policy. So I put the policy in the guidelines. Just have to get to it. So I put it in there. If you want, we can go through the policy updates, or we can go through the audit. So let's see, why don't I go through the audit first?
Why don't we do the recommendations, the audit first,
Okay.
yes.
So, they indicated that the most common finding for student activities is that there's not enough supporting documentation for deposits. Meaning, we don't have like a list of all the money that was received, who it was received from, coming with our deposits. And so that's one thing that our guidelines show that as a form in there, but we just don't receive it on a regular basis, so we need to ask for that. I've also set up a time, Principal Joni Menard and I have already met to discuss the issues and talking about how to get with all of our student activity advisors so they understand the guidelines.
Just a second, Cassie?
Are we jumping ahead
Right,
to number C under business, going over the audit, or is that just more in depth? I just want to be sure.
Oh, I have, my report has stuff about the audit.
Oh,
If you'd
okay.
like, I can
Is it
wait.
2 things? No, I was
To
just
talk about it?
curious. I just wasn't sure.
We have one student activity audit.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's do it now. I was just curious. I didn't.
That is an issue we run into with your reports.
I know,
sometimes.
that's
Which is
what-
totally fine. I saw it on there
That's why I
later,
was
and I was like,
looking.
is that what we're, I guess just clarification, that's what we're talking about now. Thank you,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Okay, so you do want to do it now?
Is that all right? with
Yeah,
you to do it
definitely.
now?
I just-
As
Okay.
long as Joanne is.
Unless, because we had facilities before that, that's why I don't wanna, if you wanna go in order, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, I just, because you have other folks here.
Which people prefer. Okay, do you want to finish the rest of the
I mean,
I mean, that's fine, I just wanna make sure that because we usually will
Okay.
move stuff around. Yeah.
Well, I have the student activity guidelines that have been updated that I thought we'd go through also. There's not a lot of changes there, but they do relate to the findings in the audit. So it makes more sense to go through the student activity guidelines after we go through the student activity audit.
Okay, I see,
Question is
right.
whether
Okay,
you go
so
through
I
this
see,
now or
different.
wait.
Yeah, do them in that order, whichever people feel is better.
Continue with your report.
Right, just
Okay.
a quick question though, we're not going over the guidelines right now for the student activities, right?
I will.
Because that seems like another,
It's very little changes that I was gonna go over and,
Just what's
Talk about.
different.
right.
Okay.
Than previously.
Okay. Let me go back. All right, so the guidelines will be your first read, and then you'll have time to review it and ask questions, and then you would bring it back for your second read like you do policies, and it would have some sort of a coding to put in your policy manual. So they talked about the most common finding being lack of information with the deposits. So we need to see where the money's coming from. Is it cash? Is it checks? You know, if kids are paying a fee to go on a field trip and the money's going through student activities, we need a list of all the students that paid money, how they paid. We get calls from time to time from somebody that says, my kid didn't go on the field trip, I want my money back. And we have no information that that person even paid. So this would be helpful to have those documents. Another issue the auditors pointed out was accountability for field trips and events and fundraisers. We have an event financial report in our handbook already, and some clubs do fill it out. We have some from Gill, we have some from Sheffield, we have some from the high school and middle school, but we don't get it consistently from everybody. So we need to make sure that that report is filled out on a regular basis. And then a special report for field trips. So if they raised money, they paid fees for the field trip, where did the money come from? Where did the money go? Was it profitable? Was it not profitable through that student activity account? And that's the whole purpose of that. And then that documentation should be kept on file at the school, and a copy can be submitted to the treasurer. Another issue, let's see, what else? So the auditors stress the importance of making purchases directly with vendors rather than reimbursing individuals who've paid for items personally, because they can benefit by earning rewards on their credit cards. And there's also a risk of items being returned and the reimbursement being applied to their credit card without their knowledge. So we have processes in place that allow students to shop on credit at some local stores, online through Amazon. We have accounts. We have a district credit card that people are able to contact us, and we can use the credit card to place orders if a company only takes a credit card. And we understand that emergencies happen and purchase orders can be processed within minutes to make that order happen. It just requires a phone call, and the admin assistants do that with us. And we have the credit cards available for both student activities and for the general fund. We have a way of doing purchase orders for student activities if they need a purchase order for something also. And going on to the next item, the auditors did provide us with some sample documents to use when we do our internal audit. So we've been doing internal audits, but we haven't been providing you with a report showing what we found in the audit, and having a report on it. So the outside audit is required every 3 years if we spend $25,000 a year through that student activity account. Currently, our high school meets that standard, but the middle school is right around 20,000, and Sheffield and Gill are less. So, we go through the guidelines here. So, in their findings, some of the items that they put, I think, are standard, because a lot of the stuff that they put into this audit, we're already doing some of these things. So, the first one is to formally adopt the policy. So that's what I talked about, being the first read and then coming back for a vote. So
That will be at the next meeting.
right, back in 2017, you did receive this. You took a look at it. We called it a first read, but we never brought it back for a vote. And so they said we do need an official vote on this.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that next time.
Part of the items are the principal's designee which would be the admin assistants, or you have that in the banking resolutions. You do vote that the admin assistants have access to the account. Remediation of deficit accounts happens from time to time. I don't believe we have any at this time. And then reconciling, which happens monthly in QuickBooks for each student activity account, for their checking account, for their savings account. They get submitted to the treasurer, who then reconciles to the cash book, who then reconciles with the bookkeeper to the general ledger. So all of that is happening. During the testing of the receipts, this is where they noted that they need student rosters, attendance logs, or pre-numbered receipts. So that's something that we need to work on for larger activities. And then the statement of final accountability for all student travel would be the field trip form that we're adding. And then the report that we will give you each year when we do the internal audit. So that's basically it, what they found. And they asked us to correct. And so the student activity procedures do cover that. So if we just go through the pages here, on page 2, I inserted a red part, and then Michael pointed out that that red part was already above the bolded part. So we're going to remove that. I thought it was a missing part, but turns out it's not. My pages are a little mixed up here.
Page 4 is the next.
Yep, on page 4, so we added that the principal may designate a staff person for the day-to-day tasks, and that would be the admin assistant who is processing items through QuickBooks and making the deposits and all that. And you've been approving that through the banking resolutions, but we put it in here because that's what they've asked for. Page 5 at the top, it's the same thing, we're just clarifying that information. The audits, like I said, the high school needs to be audited, but the middle school's at 20,000. And the auditors did provide us with documentation, so we can provide that to you after we do the internal audits. On page 7, this is a part that, although we've been reconciling the bank accounts in QuickBooks and then in the cash book and in the general ledger, 3 different ways we're reconciling, they gave us a form that they want us to complete for each of those accounts each month. So we have that form now that we'll have to do on top of the other reconciling. And they also would like the financial reports submitted to the school committee and the business office twice a year. So in January and July of each year, we'll get a report that shows all the balances of all the student activity accounts for each of the buildings. And that'll come from their QuickBooks account. And the student activity advisors will also receive account balances monthly for review and verification back to the principal. Right now, the student activities is sort of more like an ongoing basis. If they want to know what their balance is, they go to the admin assistant and they ask what the balance is, so they know. But this will be more of a formal way to do that. All right, on page 12, one item that our guidelines already indicated was that the superintendent must approve any purchases made with a personal credit card. And so we added that to this form. So if somebody purchases with a personal credit card and they're going to be reimbursed, then this form needs to come to the superintendent for approval before they can get reimbursed. But like I said, that shouldn't really be an issue, an ongoing issue, because we do have a way to order things with the district credit card and not having to use personal credit cards.
Joanne? Okay. I understand that this relates to student activity.
Mhm.
But in some respects, doesn't this also sort of apply to us as school committee members? That if we need to get something, we need to go to you for approval?
Yeah.
And you'll either do a purchase order or say, here, I'll make a call, take this to Obashan's or Home Depot, and make a quick purchase and bring
Yep.
me back the slip.
Right, so I'm working on financial procedures for everything else, and that will be included in there as well.
Good, thank you.
Yep. And then if we go to the very end of this document, on page 21, that's the new field trip incomes and expense form that they asked us to put in, and they gave us samples of these. On page 22 is the bank statement reconciliation form they would like completed. And on page 23 is a ticket sale reconciliation form. So all three of those forms came directly from the auditors, and they asked us to include them in our procedures manual. These forms, I didn't add to page 9 where all the different forms are listed. So I'm going to go back and add those forms to that page 9. We'll just list them there for you.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
On the student activity account bank statement reconciliation form, who fills that out? Who's
The
responsible?
admin assistant at the school.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all I have. The rest of the student activity stuff is Cynthia. Anyone have any questions?
Anyone have any questions at the moment? Thank you very much.
I do have a quick question.
Yep.
Because on page 5, you've got some information here regarding audits. Every 3 years, the district hires an outside auditor. Who pays for that?
The district.
So it does not come out of student activity funds?
No.
Okay.
No, there has to be a line item.
It's built into the school committee budget line with the other audits.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good question. All the audits, school committee line item pays for.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We can just skip over briefly the school committee reports. I know they're short, but if you could just have the district facilities report and the treasurer's report before that, so that our guests can give us their information and then get on with things. If I need a motion to approve that change in the agenda, because I've discovered we need to vote to change things out of order.
So moved.
Okay, Cassie moved, Heather seconded, all those in favor of switching the order? That's unanimous, please. Hi, Heath.
Hello. How's everybody? Good.
Hey.
It's a lot of information here. I'll read through the first sheet. The second, the one that more of a chart on the next one is just a tally that I tried to start keeping early on and have added to. These are the major projects. These aren't the everyday change a lock, install an air conditioner kind of things that our work order system handles, which I think we're over 800 work orders since November for those kind of little things. But these are what I would classify as something major. I mean, like the Hillcrest flood is in there when the parking lot flooded over and a few other things. So I mean, this gives a pretty good grasp of the very large task that we've had to deal with this year. The maintenance crew, some of the people that have been here for quite a long time just said, man, are you lucky, because you just handled all these breakdowns that we've never seen, all these things all at once, but it's been busy.
And thank you.
So for the summer projects that we have going on, right now everybody's doing a stripping, waxing, repairing of floors district-wide, which is quite a big project for us in some of the schools that have asbestos. We have to start building projects to actually have a company come in and repair the asbestos floor tiles. I'll talk about the asbestos stuff in a few minutes. The custodians that have been around, you'll notice that some of the linoleum out in the main areas of the hallways is starting to buckle up and it's starting to have some issues. The floor care, when they put those linoleum floors in, the custodians who were working here never received a formal floor care on those very delicate, environmentally sound linoleum floors. They all just went to a recent training on floor care. I went with them, and they took a range of trainings on these kind of things. So they're using a lot less product than they've ever used before. They were over stripping, over waxing, using tons and tons of wax and stripper. This year, things look just as good, just different practices, a lot less product that we're using. Room organizations, we're moving a lot of classrooms around right now. We're getting through a lot of heating system repairs so that we're ready for next season. A lot of the repairs that we had to make this year are the kind of things that we can do diagnostics on during the summer. The athletic and grounds repair is a big thing that we've been sinking a lot of time and effort into. We've got a goal in the next couple of years. In the gym right now, there's a banner from 2011 from how good the fields looked, and we really want to try and get that by 2021. That's like a 10-year gap, but we're already getting there apparently from what the people who give that out. The football field looks pretty good. A lot of the other fields are getting treatment actually tomorrow. So things are looking really good. The irrigation systems are up and running. We're getting a lot of mechanical stuff for the grounds care, all upgraded and redone, so it's helping the crew get their job done much more efficiently. Both the gym floors look awesome. They almost look like they're wet. They look so good, but they just redid all the gym floors. And a lot of filter maintenance to increase the air quality, new filter material that's going to help reduce the particulates in the air district-wide, and fixing a lot of door hardware, because we've had a lot of things that were hard to change during the school year, get into the classes and change door hardware. It's kind of disruptive during the day. As for me, some of my capital project progress, with the columns, we're pretty much, at the columns at Sheffield, we're pretty much ready to move on that project. We've gone to several contractors and gotten quotes. I made some phone calls today to try to finalize some of those things, and it looks like we might be able to proceed very soon with that one. The Turner's Falls High School Building Management System upgrade, I've been working with S&E Building Systems. They just recently got the Sheffield building online for me because I discovered there was a network connection on the Sheffield building that was going to help put it into my iPad that I built. Pretty much all the systems in the district. I have the cameras, card access, the new pool controls that we just put together. Everything's on my iPad, so if I get a call, I can pretty much tap into almost all of our systems that we have online right now. Sheffield's one more step away from being online. And then once we get this building management system here online, I should be able to see the function of our brand new hot water heaters that we just put in back in November. I should be able to control lights. Card access will be much easier to use, and then the efficiency of the electricity and the usage in the building with all the lighting systems that we have. Our intelligent lighting system right now isn't so intelligent, it's not working so well, but this will help. But S&E's coming in to give us one of our first formal scopes of the projects, and then once we can evaluate sort of where that's going to go, we can probably move it out to a bid in the near future. Gill, the electrical upgrade for Gill just went to the project design phase, I believe.
Yes,
Yeah.
Owl Engineer is looking at it to take, Owl Engineers who put the engineering specs together last year. And there was an addendum to those specs, and so we asked them to put the addendum into the specs so we can get back out to bid. But we're not gonna be able to get to that until next summer because, we'll go out to bid sooner, but we gotta take down the building for too long to be able to do it during a school vacation.
The Hillcrest double door entry, right now we're in an asbestos evaluation phase, which just means we have to look into what we're going to be ripping out, make sure we don't expose the building to asbestos, so that's just in a pre-planning phase. The same with Gill, but pretty much all the designs of the project that we had either in place or stuff that I re-implemented, we're going to move on both of the Gill and Hillcrest projects very soon. Gill may end up going a little bit into the school year, which is fine because it's having a internal doorway put in first, and then the doors will basically just go onto that doorway so the students can come and go. But we have a little bit of stuff to figure out there because there's several different mechanisms to keep those doors shut, and we really don't want anything like a push button so they can get out. There's a lot of young kids in there, so we have to figure that out. Sometimes they put in the proximity detector so when you walk by it'll open before you walk out, but every kid's going to walk by right there and the door's going to be open all day, so we've just got to figure out a reasonable alternative for that. And then the sidewalks here at the high school, we're trying to move as fast as we can right now to try and get them done this summer. We're going to do everything that we can and see how far we can move. If not, it may have to be something that gets pushed off for a bit because it's going to be hard to do that during the school year. But we're going to try our best to see how quickly we can get this process going, get some bids collected and everything, and get moving on the sidewalks out front.
Right, and for the sidewalks, we're also working with a vendor, an engineer, to put together the specs for that. The same one that the town uses.
So for training, all of our maintenance staff are all going through a new training curriculum that I'm setting up for them. There's a lot of state mandates that I found that these guys didn't have, and we're going to be keeping those new hires going forward. And anybody throughout the year is going to have certain requirements that I'm going to put on them. Some of those include, not limited to, simple building orientations, chemical usage, training on the cleaning equipment, formal training on these things from our care company. Levels of customer service, our work order system, ladder safety, lifting safety, bloodborne pathogens, just a lot of that stuff. They just everybody in the whole department, including myself, I went with them to the Massachusetts Facilities Administrators Association. They do an annual training. We went to Northampton and did it all together. It was a full day of asbestos awareness, bloodborne pathogens, ladder safety, a bunch of OSHA stuff. So it was a full 8-hour day of training that they took, and they're actually going to go to that yearly. I just became a coordinator for Western Mass for the MFAA, so I'm going to try and work on getting a bit more networking, and I might be doing some training so I can kind of train some of our people intermittently if we have a new hire or something like that. We went through all of our cleaning machines because that was on tap. Everybody wanted new cleaning machines here, but they all just needed some TLC, so we went through all of them with our companies. Cost a decent amount of money, but it was much cheaper than having to replace them all, so that was good. Let's see, some of the administrative stuff that I've been up to. The fire alarm system here is a recent thing that just happened in the last couple of weeks. The fire alarm system completely crashed on us. It was a significant repair just due to age. I guess the fire alarm system was old when they put it in back in 2001, and that's the way technology works. When they implement it into buildings and construction, it's 10 years old sometimes when they put it in. So we're looking at a 25-year-old type of technology. So we had to replace that just recently. As well as you can tell, this room's probably a little bit cooler than the last time you guys were in here. We had a lot of air conditioner problems up on the roof. So we got all those running, working great. The irrigation, we've had a lot of problems with that this year. We went through a whole lot of work to get those things squared away. We're working on a standards of care document for the district so that new custodians and existing ones, when they come into a job or while they're getting critiques in their annual reviews, when they walk into a bathroom and it says clean the bathroom on their jobs, what does that mean? A floor to ceiling type of thing that really outlines it so that they know the expectations of them. Same thing with our ground maintenance plan, which is very intricate. It's going to get into leaf cleanup because we had a lot of problems with multiple layers of leaf cleanup throughout the past year. It caused problems when we had that Hillcrest flood. There was still leaves everywhere because the leaf cleanup was already done, but there was still leaves all over the place. It clogged up our pumps that we were trying to drain the parking lot with. We're implementing a new work order system. It's School Dude, but it's the most popular one in the country. It gets right down to naming, like the air conditioning units here. You can put work orders into the system to have the belts and the filters done. They'll automatically pop up instead of making work for me to do one of those work orders every time it needs to be done. But as well as when we have to hire an outside vendor, we can put that service information into that unit and we can see when certain work's been done rather than keeping it in a paper file, so it's a lot more efficient. Plus the system that I just re-implemented back in November, 800 work orders in that small system. It really got, I thought we were originally maybe do 500 tops, and we're not even a year. November will be a year, we're already at 800, so we kind of had to move to a little bit of an upgraded system. I got a whole website. If you go on the GMRSD website and go to facility services, I created a pest management page, water quality page, so that our water quality testing goes in there. Asbestos management, so our asbestos information is publicly posted. So you can check that out at some point if you'd like. And then one of the major projects that I'm working on as well is working with the Hilliard Cleaning Company that does all our chemicals and machines. They're creating a cost analysis program for us to analyze how many square feet every custodian is doing in the buildings, what their workspace areas are, really formalizing it out for them and doing the calculations of what levels of clean by national labor standards that they're expected to do within schools, which we're finding out that they're actually meeting a good level or actually higher already right now than what the median level would be in a lot of the stuff that they're doing. But we're hoping to have that done by the end of the summer so that we have formal routes programmed out for all the custodians in every building. And then a whole lot of non-capital projects that you can see on those additional pages. Coming up this week, we're actually finishing a radio repeater system, so every school in the whole district, maybe even Gill included, will be able to switch on one radio channel and call everybody in maintenance so that if someone doesn't answer, all of us are hearing a call come in through the district, because we've had a lot of times where someone's on a mower, they forgot their radio at their desk or whatever, and they've been calling them, and there's no cell phone service in this building for the most part. So having that radio repeater system will hear us calling, we'll hear somebody calling over and over and over, and we can respond quicker. We're going through a whole lot of fire alarm testing and sprinkler shut-off mapping for emergency shut-offs, because this building does have a lot of the sprinkler system that's starting to corrode, and we've had some leaks here and there, so we're kind of worried that if we have an emergency, where all the maps are for all the shut-offs. We're working on a major project with that one. Same with that generator, we're working on getting the generator mapped out for the whole entire building so we know its efficiency and what areas it will do in an emergency. And then a whole lot, like I said before, plumbing repairs and heating system maintenance. Recently, we just repaired the Hillcrest roof. There was a lot of leaks that were going on up there, I guess from an old vandalism incident where someone threw some fireworks up on the roof. So the patches that were done years ago were wearing through. You can see a lot of water stains throughout the building. So we went up there, we repaired, I think, 7 different spots and then did a large repair around one of the chimneys. So after we get some water, we're gonna actually see if those spots held up, and we're gonna bring in a professional company to see if we can do a little bit more maintenance on that roof so that we don't have to worry about maybe, or we can determine whether or not we're going to replace that or give it some longevity, increase its life so we don't have to do the big repair or the replacement. Then we're gonna work on the permanent repairs to the gill heating system because of that flood. It was a lot of temporary stuff, but we have the insurance money now to fix the rest of those things, so we're gonna be initiating those in the next few weeks. And then the asbestos management projects, that's taken up a considerable amount of my time, but we've worked on getting the district's asbestos management program completely back to where it should be. It was quite the undertaking. We had to create asbestos management plans for every single building, do an entire 3-year inspection, which our company didn't get it to us in time, and the Department of Labor actually had to threaten them with fines because they were delaying our work. So just having chase a lot of people to get their things done as well. But everything's on a good road. Everything's really starting to turn around. Hopefully this list, if I did keep one for the next year, it's going to be a lot shorter.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Heath?
Are you gonna throw this up on your website, just out of curiosity? So
I could, yeah.
people can see
I
how
mean,
it feels?
yeah. I think by the end of the summer, I can turn a lot of those in progresses into something with a date, and then I'll probably post that up there. I have a lot of pictures too, so maybe on the next update that I come to see you guys, I'll put some of the pictures up, a lot of the before and after things that we've done. I mean, even if you look at the front of the school right now, a lot of mulch beds are being redone. You can actually see the Turner's Falls High School sign without the burning bush kind of surrounding it and everything. We've been over to the admin building lately. We've done some grounds work over there with the mulch and
Nice
stone.
mulch, yeah.
Back parking lot where the facilities vehicles park, we've put a lot of new gravel down over there. So just trying to make things look a lot better. And we're going to be taking down some of the parts of Sheffield that have kind of, the numbers are kind of falling apart. So we're going to put up some new bright numbers and everything in the front of the building before school starts. So you'll have curb appeal back to it.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Facilities management for the columns.
Okay, next up is the treasurer's report. Cynthia, if you'd like to join us, please.
Tough act to follow.
I know. You don't have any of those major lists.
I'm just sort of briefly following up on, first of all, I'm Cynthia Caparazzo, I'm the treasurer. I know most of you, but I don't think I've met all of you, so hello. I'm piggybacking on Joanne's student activity report. She did all the hard, heavy lifting. But part of what you have to do as a school committee every year is vote on the existing or any new clubs that might be forming. So I've included a list in your packet that you should be voting on tonight, except there's one mistake. I had written first grade at Sheffield Elementary School, and that was not, there is none. There's no club for the first grade, so that needs to be omitted. One of the recommendations from the auditor was that our cap and gown account isn't, it needs to be student raising money for student things, and they thought that their recommendation was that should be a revolving fund. So that's why there's a little asterisk next to that under the Turner's Falls High School list. And that's really the only change this year. So do you want to make a motion now and vote on it, or should I keep going and you can go back?
Okay, you need a motion on this list of student activities.
Right. You have to adopt them every year.
Okay. So.
We also, we added the senior class, or the freshman class
Yeah.
for next year,
You get rid of the,
freshman class.
Okay.
So
That
2023.
form can be found right on the back of the end of
Thank
the
you.
student activity.
I do.
I know, I had it, took a minute. I knew I'd seen it, so I was gonna.
There's a lot in here.
So you've added the class of 2023. The changes are the class of 2023 is added. The cap and gown has the asterisk because the auditors recommend it be a revolving fund instead of part of student activity account. And under Sheffield Elementary, there's no first grade, so you can cross that out as well. Any other questions on that? We have a motion to approve the list as amended, correct? And a second. Sabrina, did we get the?
Heather, but who was the second?
Heather moved. Did we have a
Second.
second? Mike seconded. Thank you, Mike. I knew you were thinking of seconding.
Yeah.
I could tell. Just by the look. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Just abstentions? Nope, looks unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. I also included in my report the little grid that we give you every year with the different bank balances, so you sort of get an overview of where we are. There's something else in my narrative. I said that all of the balances were as of June 30th, but I hadn't gotten Greenfield Savings bank statements yet, so they're as of May 31st, but close enough.
Okay, that
that
can be,
looks like
I'm
this.
sorry, that
Yeah,
can be
that's all right.
found 1, 2, it's the third page after the one we were on. The amount of your regional school district, 7/1/2019. Thank you.
I think you guys really need more paper.
This one set new records, seriously,
Yeah.
for the amount of pages. really.
On that, besides the bank balances, there's what is called a letter of credit, which is what the banks sort of ensure that they have if something would happen. So it sort of guarantees our money, that our balances as they're in there. I just wanted to, I realized that might be a little confusing, that the TD Bank, it's a combination of those three numbers under letter of credit, the 325,000, 100,000, and the 1,625,000. So we're way over it's over our balance of 1.8 million, if that makes sense.
And that's just something you're reporting to us, we don't need to
Something I
take any
just
action.
reported. Yep.
Thank you.
And then my big claim to fame is the resolutions that we always have to do every year, because I'm really the conduit for the bank. And every time we have a new administrator or change in assistant treasurers, we have to get a vote by this committee to give to the bank. So the first one is, there's two of them. One is for the Greenfield Savings Bank, which is a little trickier because that's where we have our student accounts, and so the principals and the administrative assistants are on there, and that looks sort of like this. And this was the one that had the typo, right?
No, it was the other
It was
one.
the other one. Okay, so this one is pretty much, this one is changed because we have a new principal and a new assistant principal at the high school. The second one had a typo. And this is for me and Mike, who is my assistant treasurer, to do what we need to do with the different banks.
Okay,
And it's pretty much the same, except I just changed the
Hold it up, I'm
dates.
sorry, because I have.
Yep. This one?
Okay, because there's
Which
one
one
in
you
color
want?
that has 7 bullets, I was gonna make sure this is, okay.
Which one are you looking at?
It replaces the one that doesn't have letterhead on it, I think.
Yeah, they look different.
Oh, it says
too, than ours.
revised next to the date, that will help. That's the
Yes.
one where there was a
Gotcha.
typo.
Yep, thank you.
And that's exactly the same as last year, except for the typo. It's just the dates are changed because it's this year. And the other one is changing the actual principals and assistant principal names. So you need to vote on those as well.
Yes, and those are to establish resolution for banking accounts and banking powers at these different banks that are listed on the two of them.
Can I move to approve them together?
Is it acceptable to approve them together? Does that
Yep.
work? Okay, we have a motion to approve both of the resolutions as stated. We have Heather
Second.
moved, Mike seconded. Any questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed or abstentions? No, it looks unanimous.
Thank you.
So will that do?
That's
Okay, thank you so much, Cynthia, for coming.
Sure.
Okay, so we moved two of the items up so that people who came to do reports will be able to go ahead and give those reports. And we thank them again. Going back to the order as it was, we come to school committee reports. The warrant subcommittee approval, we need a vote to approve the warrants that were signed this evening. Do you have them?
Have them.
Okay. The numbers of the warrants are 2002, 2003, 1964.
That's the cleanup warrant.
That's the one that cleans up from the past year. And 2001. Do people want to know what each of them covers? 2002 is a student activity account at the high school. 2003 is a general fund. 1964 is the cleanup of the general fund.
Yep, and other funds,
And other funds.
Right.
Circuit breaker, athletic general.
the regular accounts.
And the 2001 is this student activity account for the middle school. Any questions or comments on those?
Oh, I do have one comment. The general fund, I believe fiscal 20, had it was paying a payment for a school committee member to attend a course. So you probably want to vote on both of those, so that way one of them includes a school committee member payment.
Which one was that? Which one has
Which
the
one?
school
I
committee?
think it was fiscal 20, the fiscal 20, but I can't remember. She put it in the email when she sent it out. I have to
Is
go
it
back
where
and
the
look
general
at it.
fund is by itself or with everything else?
It's not the student activity ones, it's one of the other two. So I'm just gonna see if I have the email from her that indicates which one it was.
Because the person that is reimbursed should not.
Right, I think it was Jen.
No, it
Oh,
was
it's
Bill.
Bill.
Oh, it was Bill.
So it's not the
It
most
doesn't
recent one.
say.
It's for his training.
Yeah, she doesn't say which number.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's under the 1964.
Okay, the bigger one.
I think it is, yeah.
Mine will probably be on the next one.
No, he wasn't reimbursed, we
Oh.
paid a
We paid
payment
it,
that
okay.
was
All
for
right,
a
I thought
class
you
that
said
he
he
was
was
taking.
reimbursed, which he wasn't.
You took the class in June.
Charting the course.
Right, so it was on the cleanup warrant,
1960.
the large one.
It's in the cleanup warrant, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is what number?
1964.
1964.
So
So
we,
in that case, we need to change the motion to.
that's okay, I'll move to approve 1964.
1964 by itself.
Second.
And Mike seconds. All those in favor? Any against? Any abstentions?
Bill abstains, I think.
Bill, I think you might want to abstain.
I'm sorry.
Does he need
I've
to
got my
abstain?
hand down.
Yeah, he can
Thank you.
abstain.
I think he was just waving earlier. He was just being friendly, right? So we have one abstention.
I move to approve warrants 2001, 2002, and 2003.
Yes.
So moved.
We have moved. We have need a second.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, I can't take it out.
Oh, second?
All those in favor? Any opposed, any abstentions? That looks unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the second item, just since we had our last, the planning meeting on July 2nd, I thought it might be helpful to just do a short report on that, since it was in the conference room and was not taped or broadcast. It was called the School Committee Planning Session. We worked on norms, processes, and goals. We reviewed and discussed our meeting norms, process, and procedures. We also reviewed our school committee goals and the topic of self-evaluation. Discussion centered on the decision-making process, especially how to make it clearer for the school committee and the public. In particular, we considered the goal of providing enough information and time while being clear about the ultimate goal and staying focused on achieving it. While we often touch briefly upon these matters, as well as related policies that apply to this at regular business meetings, this meeting particularly allowed enough time for a more thorough discussion of these matters, and our aim is to continue to examine and refine our goals, processes, and procedures as we go along. Anyone have anything they'd like to add?
So moved.
Okay. I don't think we need to vote it, but you can.
Okay.
It's just a report, as
Yep.
it were. Okay, thank you. Next on our list is just for a brief moment to return the student activities audit report. If anybody has thought of any other things they want to ask about at the moment, I think they're pretty good, the auditors are pretty good at reporting pretty clearly. This is informational until next time, at which case we will vote I believe we have to vote to accept the audit as well as, if I'm remembering correctly?
You vote to accept the
Do we usually
audit.
accept the audit?
No, you just
not
receive
usually?
it.
Okay,
Yep.
but we will vote on the
Handbook.
handbook with its revisions at that time. And I did investigate the policy that we have that is quoted in here and that goes along with it. Our version is exactly the same as the MASC version. So I think as long as we update it whenever there are updates, I thought otherwise we'd have to update it now, but it looks just like the state version. But we will vote to accept the procedures manual because that's what the auditors recommended.
Jane, since you're the chair of that committee, I believe, we'll take your word, and maybe we should just review it next school committee meeting, vote on it to keep it.
Oh, the policy as well?
Yes.
Certainly, we can add that to
And
the.
review it, and
Yeah.
then people will look and say, oh, they reviewed it in 2019, rather than, oh, they haven't done anything for 5 years with that.
Okay, and if it's acceptable, we can just say that the entire committee reviewed it, since we provided it in the packet, as opposed to asking the subcommittee to get together in the summer,
Oh.
right now.
That's okay.
Okay, so we will vote that next time. Thank you.
Jane, I have
Uh-huh.
a question.
Yeah.
How many of these forms that were recommended are new?
The forms and the student activity?
Yeah.
It's all the ones that are red at the top. So there are 3, the
So that's-
last 3.
Right.
Number
okay.
9,
Last
10, and
three.
11.
That have the red
One of the things that occurred to me while I was looking at all of this, and the fact that there isn't solid documentation, which is the big concern for the auditors, is having been in banking for a couple of years, what I found is that people really have difficulty with anything that has to do with this kind of stuff. I don't know if they're intimidated, but filling out a deposit slip terrifies people, and they just collapse and they come up, and teenagers have little or no experience because they're still living at home and their parents are doing this banking for them, so they don't have a lot of hands-on to fill out this kind of thing, which to an auditor looks fairly simple, but I'm not so sure that it is. And I was wondering if, I don't know how to quite do this, but it seems to me that it might be helpful if the people in charge of the activities, the advisors and the students that are going to have to be filling some of these out, have some kind of a training, or just so that they're on the same page?
I don't believe the students fill them out
No.
anyway.
The students
No,
don't
the
fill
students
these
don't.
No, it's the advisors.
is
It would be
the-
the teacher
yeah.
or the advisor.
So they have it, but if there are receipts missing and things like that, they have to come from somewhere. So the advisors are not doing this?
The advisors are doing this. The
But-
advisors,
And the administrative assistant at the building, the adult.
Right, but what I'm saying is that one of the auditor's
Findings.
concerns was that there was not the documentation
right.
needed. And so, to me, what that suggests is that there needs to be, for the advisors or whoever's going to do this, some additional training, because when you talk, or when an auditor talks about documentation, that will not necessarily be the same thing as what is being heard among the advisors. There are specific things with banking and with things that have to do with money that would be an acceptable piece of documentation. And my experience is that people don't always understand. You're not always speaking the same language, I guess.
Right.
Right.
So I have already talked to Joni Menard, the high
Mhm.
school principal, and we are going to be meeting to come up with a plan to get everybody trained up
Great.
on this manual and how to use it.
Great.
Right,
And how
right,
to
and the
use the
students
documents.
would not be filling out
Okay.
any of this,
Right.
or, Tommy?
My understanding, unless it's changed since I was handling some of the student activities, is that the advisors are appointed. And when they're appointed, and I think it's somewhere in this pile of paper that they talked about, where they would be given the new policy and all the forms that are there. So I'm assuming that that's when that happens, when you're appointed, the advisor is appointed. There's a point at the beginning of the year or whenever that they're gonna be provided the manual as
Right.
well as this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
I mean, that's what I'm assuming.
Right, and I believe the current policy will continue that they have to sign,
Mm-hmm.
the advisor has to
That they
sign
received
that
it.
they received it and understand it. And then the administrative assistants are also involved, and they will get a training
Right.
to make sure everybody's up to speed on the new forms and any new regulations in there. Joanne's already been working on that, but
I
thank
mean,
you for that question.
I agree, you know,
Yeah, absolutely,
it
yes.
tends to be very complicated, especially as a
Right.
teacher, and then you have to do this extra step, but
Right.
as someone who is gonna accept a position as the advisor, you gotta understand that that's what the process is.
Right, and part of this issue has come up with student activity accounts at the state level. The Mass General Law is specific about how they can be handled. And some districts in other parts of the state in particular, there were issues with how things were handled. So they've come out with really strict regulations, and we audit this yearly. We have an internal audit, and then every 3 years, we have an external audit to make sure that all the paperwork is in place and that we're doing it according to the new regulations. Thank you. Yeah, Bill?
Just when an advisor or whatever has to sign that they've received it, does someone also go through it with them?
Yes,
To
two
introduce
people.
them to it, and that also gives the perspective of what the intent of that is?
You mean the guidelines as a whole?
Yes.
That's the plan, that we're gonna be going through it with the advisors and explaining the process and explaining their responsibility in advising that
Yeah.
club.
Because just signing it that you've received it, they may not read it.
Right. So that's the requirement, that it be read and that they understand it.
Okay.
And it is a lot of forms and a lot of information. Carl?
I just wanted to add to this conversation, the handbook clearly lays out the roles and responsibilities for administrators, but the word advisor doesn't appear until the very end of all of their responsibilities. You might want to make that section clear, that as an advisor, this is what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
It says that for principals and for other administrators, but like I said, the word advisor doesn't appear until the end of this.
In the handbook?
Yep.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
the staff handbook?
Wait,
Yes.
can I ask, are you talking about the staff handbook or the student activities handbook?
The student activities.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
that's a
Okay,
student,
the
yeah.
student activities,
So it's
yeah.
not listed in the student activity handbook saying that the advisor is responsible for X, Y, Z. So maybe that's a point that we need to take
Okay.
a look at.
Great.
That's what, that's why I wanted to clarify what you were saying, whether it was the staff
Right, I
handbook or the-
misunderstood too. I
No.
thought it was the staff handbook. Okay.
I mean, if it's not explicit in here, and I understand there's a plan, for the Joannes and Jonies, sorry, to get together and discuss that, but I think it does need to be explicit. You know, like you said, but, I mean, you get the manual and you're like, yeah, I'll sign off on it, I got it, thanks. You know, but I think there, especially given that there are revisions to the policy and new forms. I mean, with this field trip form, like, I don't think they had to fill that out before, or whether it was filled out with Fidelity or what have you, but I think it's important to be explicit about what the requirements are. So if you're gonna accept that position as an advisor, here's what you need to do. Here's what you're responsible for.
Make it clear. Thank you.
Can I, just one more thing, one thing I'm not seeing on the forms is, I mean, I'm just concerned about the, sort of the checks and balances, sort of who's kind of checking. The field trip expense form says it was submitted, and then so if I'm the teacher, I sign off, and is there anyone else that's sort of saying, oh, you didn't fill that out correctly, or you know, this needs to, or do they hand it back, how does that work? Or does it?
It should be filled out by the advisor
Mhm.
to the principal.
Right.
Then the principal would review it, and if they have any, or the admin assistant would review it. If things don't balance, if things don't make sense, they know what's been received, they know what's been paid. They could just do brief check of it, and then it goes to the principal.
I'm just wondering if there should be sort of a review by the building administrator, say, you know, to avoid any issues, to say, I did review this is good to go, or a spot where someone can initial it, to
We
say
can
received.
put a line for
Yeah.
that. This form came exactly as is from the auditors and didn't
Mhm.
have that, but we can add a line
I'm just
for the
thinking of sort of
initials for the principal.
eliminating any issues where it says, you know, I did that form, I signed off, I submitted it. There's nothing on here saying that, you know, so the administrator said, yeah, that looks good. I remember that trip that you went to the Great Falls, you know, Discovery Center or whatever. Sort of a checks and balances.
Okay. Anything else anyone noticed or is wondering about? Anything?
Did you have a question? Did you have a question, Steve?
Can we, anything we could?
No, I just had a suggestion. Oh, well, she has a
Well, I
suggestion?
think
Okay.
When I did this at another place, they were submitted by and then verified by. So it was submitted by the
Yeah.
class advisor, but then it was verified by the student activities.
Administrative assistant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So
Not-
verified might be.
Oh, okay, that
Sorry.
sounds like
I'm
a
gonna
good
take
way.
notes, not talk.
No, but that was a valid point. That's what I was trying to get. Because you know how you have the cash, you have the, I used to know what this form was called, cash turnover form. Like you have the cash turnover form, I handed over $5. Who's verifying that?
Yeah.
You know, here's my field trip form, I did this.
So
Who's
two
verifying that?
people looked at it, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, I just want to add, there's also a form in here for people to sign out a cash box. So, the cash box log, so they would have that, and so it would go through the treasurer. So we have that available for any groups that need a cash box.
Oh, okay. And that has been in the packet?
It's been in
previously,
there, it's not new. It's not been used, nobody's ever come and said they need a cash box, but
Okay.
we will have it available for people. We're gonna pull the money and have it in a safe, ready to go, so when somebody needs it, it's set with a certain amount of cash in it.
This is for the student activities only, the cash
Yes.
box,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So I'm just clear.
Just, this is
This
all
particular
just
one,
that,
yes.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Good point.
And again, that's part of the process, I think, that needs to be also outlined to the advisors. I mean, like you said, it's been in there, but I don't know, just from my experience, I don't think they're aware that there's a process for that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Next on our list is item D, which is the secondary level school improvement plan for 2018, 2019. And this is just an initial discussion. It will be discussed again at a later point, but this is a time when we generally have a discussion of this, or at least a beginning introduction to it.
Yeah, the way I was thinking of the next three agenda items is they are information about how the middle and high school did this past year with the school improvement plan generally, and then discipline issues and school culture and climate more specifically. And I don't know, you may or may not want to revisit those three items again in the future, but what I would like to do is then start the pivot this evening of talking about the plans for the coming year, the early stages of the turnaround plan and what the NEASC work is. And so when we return, I'd like to have Joni come back probably to the second August meeting and be able to say, here's what we're looking at for the year ahead, driven in large part by the challenges we've just faced in the year just ending. Clearly, we can't do both, all the historical stuff tonight, and we're not even done. We're in the middle of looking at data and feedback to plan for going to the future. But I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, there's a second part to this. It's not, here's how the year went, those were our challenges, and we're all done. That's just backdrop for the real important work going forward.
Timmy?
Jane, we're starting another big chunk.
Yes.
I
Would
hate
you
to
like
do
a
it.
5-minute break?
Oh, it'd be wonderful. You read my mind.
5 minutes, 20 minutes. Yep, that's a good suggestion. I wanted to say that, but I don't want to. I don't know if we need another count, do we have to start? We're good? Okay, was it on all the time?
I just turned the volume down.
Perfect. It can be up again now. Thank you. Okay, so we're back, and we are looking at the school improvement plan and that whole section. And I believe Joni Menard is joining us, the new high school principal. Thank you for coming, and let's just start by saying, is there anything you'd like to share?
No, I'll let you go and
Okay.
jump in if I need to.
All right. Yeah.
There are a couple, over the next 3 or 4 agenda items, there may be a couple of places where Joni might have something to say, but we don't have anything planned, and this is, it's also a good opportunity for her to hear from you about things you might be particularly concerned about, or, in terms of forward-looking stuff, so. So anyway, I don't have any statement about the school improvement plan for the year just ended, other than to make a couple of general observations that the 5 goals that the school had were complex, and some of them maybe a little overly complex, like number 2 involved a lot of different things, and so there were lots of advances made on multiple fronts in the past year for the middle and high school, but I think we've talked about this generally somewhat, but I don't know, I've made a kind of a general public statement about my own learning. I personally feel like we've really reduced, compared to the kind of accelerated improvement plans and kind of things the state has said, you really need to hit hard all these different things across your schools in the coming years. I've recognized those requests of us to be unrealistic, but even having taken a step back, it hasn't been enough of a step back given our capacity in terms of time and resources to do what we would like to do. And I think as we go forward in the year ahead, we will kind of retrench once again to say, what are the things that we can do that are most important and that we can feel good about accomplishing collaboratively and together. And I think this plan from the high school for the year just ended is a place where I've kind of gotten that feeling that we're going to need to kind of be more strategic and support really well the kinds of things that we want to do. So that's one kind of general observation. One of the other observations I would make is that, and this will come up probably in the next couple of agenda items, is at the halfway point of the year, there were lots of concerns about school culture and climate, particularly as it pertained to civil rights incidents of all kinds, and also about the consistency of managing student negative behaviors, for lack of a better word. And so we responded to that in a number of ways, including changing what we did with some of our PD days, our afternoons, in terms of kind of civil rights related training, civility trainings, equity trainings, and also the February PD afternoon, and I think one of the faculty meetings was dedicated towards making sure we are on the same page with our common understandings about the disciplinary system. So that did take a toll on some of these curriculum and department-based initiatives because they were intended to have some spring opportunities for people to work a little more together than they had a chance to, and also for some sharing among staff that wasn't able to happen because of the shift. And we're not done making shifts, so the shifts we started to make in the spring. So I would just add that. And then the appendix that Annie and the school, some members of the school council that did the review had, they included some artifacts related to things pertaining to expectations about behaviors. There's something in here, Appendix 4 is a staff protocol for responding to incidents of bias or discrimination. And what's interesting to me, and maybe to the 3 school committee members that were at Thursday's training, this interrupt, question, and educate kind of protocol for dealing with kids, saying somebody's gay or using the N-word. This is one of the things we learned and even practiced using in our training. It's a kind of a best practice approach to that work. And so the middle school staff, faculty and administrators have more work to do in this area, clearly, but they also have some good foundational things in place that we want to build on going forward. And I guess that's how I would open on the school improvement plan.
Any comments or questions at this time? Chelsea?
Well, I guess I just want to make a comment, you know, looking at these goals, and I remember, you know, when we went over them before, you know, and I guess it's not meant to be as an excuse, but there was a lot of damage control that needed to be done this year at the secondary level for a multitude of reasons, and so I think that it's fair to say that it, you know, probably wasn't possible to get, you know, as deep into these goals, you know, as the staff would have liked to, sadly. So I think that's important to kind of talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was some transitioning in the administrative staff, you know, due to unseen circumstances, and so, you know, that can weigh heavy on your plan for the year and goals that you want to hit. You know, they take a back seat, so keep working, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Teresa?
One of the things that struck me when I looked at the incidents report,
Yes, we're not quite at that part yet.
well, as far as goals, that there is a marked difference. And so I'm wondering about,
This was last year's plan.
right,
It's completed.
but it's for Great Falls and Turner's Falls. And so I'm wondering if, because I don't see any difference between the two schools when it comes to the goals, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yep.
And because I saw such a difference in the incidents, I'm wondering how this all, you know, you've got a very different population, let's put it that way, in the middle school. And so I don't see anything that addresses, per se, that difference in your goals.
So there's, I guess, two big parts of a response. One is that the principal working with the faculty, and I think, you know, the school council is not a dynamic group of a lot of parents and community members. It's relatively small, but they're a part of this process as well. But they haven't been a strong part of this process. But so, driven largely by the principal, I know she has made a decision. She made a decision needing to weigh that. With that school set up the way it is, you know, do we have a single school improvement plan with similar initiatives that can be differentiated middle and high? Or do you come up with two different school improvement plans? She found, and it could go either way, there's not really a right answer to that, but given the fact that a lot of our improvement work is collaborative work, where we have same subject area teachers work together, it's more complicated. It would be more complicated to kind of take those apart a little bit. For example, there's only 2 English teachers in the high school and 3 at the middle school. So if you want to be driven by improvement initiatives that are collaborative in nature, you're going to have 2 people work together in 3, or you're going to have to work across subject areas, which is fine depending on the kind of work that you want to do. So I think and this is great that Joni's here for this conversation. So I think going forward for the year ahead, if we have improvement initiatives related to school climate, or let's just be more specific, you know, teachers building strong relationships with students so that we get a higher percentage of kids say that they feel like they're really well known by a faculty member, that the specific work at the high school level might be around the advisory program, and at the middle school level, it's this developmental design program, and there's a different structure. And so the initiatives will be tailored to the 2 different schools, I'm expecting, but they may have a common goal. So I think that's what you can expect to see by the end of August when we come back.
Okay.
And I can see that in some of the measurable outcomes, and even a little bit of the progress, it is distinct. There are some points where they are actually distinct, so makes sense for our subject.
And just looking at this report, which is really helpful and I think important, it made me think about, and I was trying to refresh my memory, about when the next school improvement plan for this coming year is generally forthcoming, and I couldn't find that immediately on my list of items for school committee meetings.
But yeah, we'll plan to have it, done before school starts.
Oh, wonderful. So
We may get tweaked, but we really need to know
Right.
what we want to do before the year gets going.
Right, that's what I felt, but I wanted to be sure I was remembering that correctly. So then we will be seeing the next school improvement plan shortly. Is there anything, Joni, that you'd like to add that you've thought about in conjunction with this report or even looking to the future?
This is definitely valuable information, and it's going to drive how we go forward. We definitely have room for improvement, and we know that. I have already been talking to our summer school students about some of this and trying to get feedback already. Meeting with community members such as Jen, some outside people have been coming in. So I'm starting to kind of get some feelers out there. I will also, with Jen's help, be doing principal chats outside, like the brick house, and also at school, to get some feedback prior to this coming forward to all of you too. So voices will be able to be heard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's great information.
Maybe you should tell them a little bit more if you're willing to, about,
Sure.
what the kind of conversations you've been having with kids at summer school. She's been talking with a lot of them and getting
Sure.
all kinds of insights, I think.
Yes, so it's been very enlightening, and I did not anticipate anything different. So we've been having behavioral issues come up in summer school as we've been going along, and I've been addressing them, and students are very skeptical of if I'm going to follow through, what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk the walk, talk the talk, if I'm just giving them lip service, so to speak. So it was really interesting. There was an incident last week regarding a student coming forward to me and saying that she was very uncomfortable with something that happened, that she felt slighted, and she's like, this is the same old, what are you going to do about it? I did not witness the behavior. I talked to her for a while, and she's basically, nothing's going to change. I'm like, you have to give me a chance. I understand what you are saying, but you have to give me a chance. If you just shut down on me, we're not going to be able to make positive change. What happened? What do you want to see happen? I drew those two girls aside, had a conversation. I'm saying, I'm not saying you did anything like this. I want you to know this is the behavior that was reported to me. This type of behavior going forward from this day forward is not accepted anymore. I want you to know that. So they're just kind of looking at me, and I said, again, I'm not accusing you of anything. We just need to make sure we're treating each other with respect. You should now be expecting respect from me. In return, I'm expecting respect from you. I've seen, we're talking not a long time already, but I'm seeing a difference. I was telling Carl just a little bit, I've been visible in the halls, and it makes a huge difference. I have made the change already that teachers are no longer going to have lunch duty. It's going to be administrator's duty. So that's for a couple reasons. So number one is to get to know all the students better, to see them in a non-threatening environment, kind of joke around, kind of get back to like, hey, what'd you do last night? How was your weekend? That type of thing. But it's also making sure that I communicate the expectations right from the get-go, and not that it's not that they can't have fun and talk to their friends, but it's, not blaring music. It's doing it in a respectful way. It's, being able to have that downtime. So The first couple days of summer school is really funny because you could see the kids visibly like go like this when I'm coming up to them. And I'm like, get used to it, guys. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm going to be asking you lots of questions. So they're already starting to buzz about that, and they'll come in and talking to me. So it's just me continually following through. And that's something I need to prove to them. And I get that. So the one girl's frustrated. She's like, it's not going to change, and you're going to wait. I said, bear with me. I said, give me a while, and we'll get there. So making some positive gains already, but it's changing how they, I think, view my role too. And it's going to be visible in their classroom and out in the halls, seeing them. So it'll be a culture shock for them.
Sweet.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
Not a bad thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. The next item in this sort of a packet is the secondary school discipline data here for discussion. And again, as Michael said, we're not just going to look at it, discuss a little, and forget it's here. We're going to look at it in terms of what the future will hold and how the new plans will work with it. I think
There's really three documents. One was put together by Principal Leonard showing a 2-year overview of bias-related incidents in suspensions. And then there's a list of infractions of all kinds that were recorded for the middle school for this year just concluded, and also for the high school. So those are the three things we're looking at the moment. The one thing I want to make sure and say about the bias-related incidents, well, actually for all this data, particularly at the middle school level, suspensions are for serious things, but they also, when Kathy Smith and Rebecca Zuckley were giving me a summary of some of this data before they left, they said, they also record uses of, and I just mentioned this earlier, like someone saying something is gay, or somebody quoting lyrics from a song that use the N-word. Those things are all flagged in these numbers. So the numbers are way too high, so I'm not going to back away from that. But I also want to make sure that you understand these are not all verbal direct assaults on somebody, or fights or shoving matches and that kind of thing. So all of that is together, at least on this first page. It gets separated out in the other documents. The value of seeing the bias-related data for 2 years, I think, is that you can see it's relatively unchanged. It's not significantly different between those 2 years. So the challenges here are ongoing. And also they are of a range of types of areas where we need to educate kids better. It's about gender, sexual orientation, it's about race. There's a kind of an across-the-board level of behaviors that demonstrate, a lack of civility or tolerance and ignorance. And so we have work to do totally across the board in that regard. The other two documents, the middle school, and I didn't know this until a couple days ago or last week, what gets recorded at the middle school, there's like 11 different categories there, and it's like 6 categories at the high school. I don't know the reason behind that. Joni was just saying today with her new administrative team coming in, they want to be on the same page about what gets recorded, how it gets recorded, what their definitions are. And so that's already been identified as a need. I don't put too much stock in the trend over the course of the year, but I did just want to look at that. So if you add up all the infractions from the different types of categories at the middle school level, it's 26, 27, 28 in the fall, and it's, for some reason, when we printed this, June got clipped and it's not there, but by April it was 19, May it was 7, June it was 4. It does tail off as the year goes on, which is great to see, but I won't say that that's because we found the cure to things. Similarly, at the high school, the number of infractions are much lower, in part because of what got tracked is more limited. And generally, the numbers are lower in the spring as well. So I don't know if you have any questions about that data or any observations about it, but we did promise we would bring that to you. What we haven't finished calculating, Tina, our tech person, has to submit this by the 18th to the DESI, is the high profile kinds of infractions. So that's not finalized yet, but we can come back to you, as we've done in the past, with the numbers of suspensions related to drugs or weapons or assaults. Those are things that have to get reported to the state, or civil rights violations, serious ones that result in maybe suspensions. And so those types of categorical information isn't finished yet, but we can return with that if that's an interest.
So that's not part of the reporting that you have here? Is that what you're
It
saying?
is, but it's not, like,
That's separate?
it's not separate. Like, you can't tell from this data how many suspensions there were for bullying or that kind of thing. Because, as I said earlier, there's a whole range of infractions from inappropriate comments to assaults, and so you don't get to see the consequences here. There's not suspension data. It's here, but it's not pulled out separately.
So the document we could receive would be of the more severe incidents and how they
Yeah.
were dealt with?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the number of
That's the report
suspensions
she's doing
for,
anyway.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do, and I'm glad that Joni's here, and my concern, and you said it was already identified in terms of the fidelity of reporting. That's, some of these, I know you said like the numbers, you're not gonna shy away from the numbers, some of it looks, I mean, and just on the surface, knowing what I've heard and what's been told to me, it seems anemic to me. So I do have a concern in terms of, there is a little bit of interpretation when an incident happens, and where I think the reporter will say, is that really, so it's really open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Who generally reports this information, or actually puts it into the system?
The deans of students.
Okay.
I'll clarify something for you too, to kind of make you feel a little bit better. So Tom and I are both on the same page with this. So so Tom's a new incoming VP.
Okay.
Sorry, okay. So my expectation, and we've talked about this, and he's in agreement, that he is meeting with both deans every day. They are calibrating, so at the beginning of the year, before there's even any incidents, they are talking about, if this would happen, what would you do and why? Okay, so they are having those rich conversations about, just like I need to do with the superintendent on evaluations. So then at the end of every day, Tom and I are also talking, so he's informing me of those. So this is to prevent, like person X determining this should be the consequence for this infraction, and person Y determining this should be the consequence for this infraction. It's doing those exercises. Will it be perfect? No, but I mean, it's
Right.
going to be, we can
Perfect.
close those gaps and have those conversations. And the understanding is, if there's swearing going on, this is what's gonna happen. If there's,
Right. Is that also sort of, again, in terms of fidelity reporting? So you say that the dean of students put them in, so what about the behaviorists and the, nope.
The
Our-
paraprofessional
Thank
at
you.
the high school level.
Yes.
that
So they
respond.
don't report anything, they don't put that in, how is that?
No,
I'm
the
gonna go
the
back to-
interventionist has.
So okay,
But I don't think Amber, the woman at the high school, has entered infractions onto the reporting system. I'm not positive about that.
okay, but the behavioral interventionist has?
Mhm.
Okay, so it's the interventionist, the
we
dean of
need to bring
students?
them in, so good
Okay.
call.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that could be fluid.
Yeah.
We may want to, revisit who's doing what, with what frequency. I will say that we're not 100% on this yet, but I think it's more likely than not that we won't have a dean of students for the middle school and one for the high school. I think they're going to loop with kids by grade level. so that one dean will have the 9th grade class, for example, and stay with them for 4 years. And then another dean will have the 10th grade class and stay with them for the remaining 3 years. So they'll both have their own sets of kids and families that they get to know. And so it won't, and that's how we're gonna, there's a good chance we're gonna set it up that way.
It's about building relationships, so
Right.
then, you're aware of
Continuing.
something that happened and how it was handled and all of that.
Heather? I mean, there is something you can take from it. I'm not gonna say whether it's, I'm not gonna make a statement about it, but, I mean, at least at the middle school, disrespect of fellow student is by far the most infractions. And so, I mean, it's interesting. So, I mean, because if you look at the titles of the other things, such as maybe bullying, threatening behavior, sexual harassment, physical aggression, those seem to be, I'd like to know, I guess, what they mean exactly. I don't know if we can, but
There was a list of,
that's a good.
On Sunday, I sent you
Kathy-
a list
Kathy
of
had like a list, yeah.
descriptors from.
Oh, I missed
There,
that.
it's included in this.
Descriptors,
There's-
yep.
Yeah.
Would you like mine?
Kathy Smith wrote that for me Friday before she left for good. I asked her if she could put something like that together. And,
Oh, no, you didn't have to do that, thank you.
Oh, the very last page. There it is. Thank you. Cassie?
I was thinking too that I hate to say the numbers look light because I would like them to be lighter than they are, but, I think too, just, having a united front and everyone on the same team so that the expectations are clear. What's bullying to one person may not seem like bullying to another person, but it's gotta be. It has to, everyone's gotta be speaking the same language.
I'll take that a step further, so we want to revamp the grade level meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So the students have a clear understanding, and I'm not sure what that needs to look like, but it needs to be student involvement too. So I don't know, is that students acting out things for people to see and having a discussion?
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like, but it needs to involve the students
And I
too.
yeah, and it seems like we've heard, from students about a feeling of disconnect at times from
Right.
having a trusted adult.
Right.
So I wonder, are they coming home and then just telling everyone else about this bullying, but they haven't felt comfortable telling anyone at school?
I'm sure that's part of it.
Teachers can only see so much. So if it's not something that's actually reported, it's probably not gonna be documented.
Right.
You can't report something that's not documented. So I think just being aware of that, being that trusted adult. I love the idea of the dean of students staying with grades. I think that that's just a great idea, because they know at the end of August, beginning of September, if they have an issue, who they're looking out for. Because you and Tom are never leaving.
I'm sorry, now
Neither
you're
is the dean
here.
of students. No, I'm just kidding. But it is just
Yeah,
that consistency.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but also even knowing if one of the dean of students has to depart for whatever reason, the new person coming in has that clear guideline of okay, these are the kids, I'm gonna get close to everyone, but these are the kids I really am gonna, hone in on and make that connection with.
And I heard from students too. They felt it was inequitable consequences. And I told them that, I said, we will be addressing that. So I need to be able for them to see that I've heard them and I'm taking steps to try to change that.
Yeah.
So,
And I think just students
voice.
feeling secure and safe too,
right.
to have that communication.
I think the idea of looping, I've never heard it used in that sense, but there was a lot of research when I was teaching about the idea if you could in buildings where teachers looped with their class, perhaps 2 years in a row or more, the statistics were great in terms of, again, it's knowing each other, trusting each other, being familiar. It's very hard for one adult, being a dean or an assistant principal for like 4 classes.
Yeah.
To know everybody all the time. So I think that idea of giving them the opportunity to get to know the students and the students get to know them over years.
Yeah, and not to mention the staff as well. Because if, the same staff typically teaches, you know, ninth grade English is always going to be the same teacher. Well, they're, you know, forming that connection with the dean of students as well. You know, you have to make a call for them to come to your class. You know who's showing up, and you've already had that communication instead of, you know, is this dean of students handling this infraction, or is this one doing it, or, you know. So I think that'll hopefully be easier on them as well.
Teresa?
One of the other things that occurred to me, looking at the data, middle school has their own problems, but it occurred to me that you're bringing 3 different schools into 7th grade. Irving, Gill, so those are 3 different cultures you're trying to meld together. And I really haven't heard about how, or the effort or the direct effort to do that kind of thing. I'm sure it happens, but, you know, the attention, because I do know that the Irving kids find coming to this school a vast difference from the environment that they have been in. And so if there's some way that you can work on that whole aspect of it, and this is not just this year, I mean, this has been one of the things that I have consistently heard since my kids, who are not now parents with kids coming to this school, have said, and that's a theme that I hear from all Irving kids, is that culturally it's a different school environment than they're used to, they're accustomed to. And so I like the step-up day that they have. I think that's really, really helpful, but there must be other things that can be done either before they get here or, you know, once they get here, and it might help eliminate some of the incidences, because, you know, we all instinctively, when we don't know somebody, tend to look at how they're different from us than how they're the same, and that's where some of the stuff that happens and shouldn't happen might come from.
And I think I've heard historically, though, that the middle school teachers do work on team building.
Yes.
In that sense, that was really cited as a positive about the middle school, that they work on that kind of thing, because
They do.
it's true. I mean, the kids from Gill, it's a whole different, for everybody, it's a much
Right.
larger situation.
Exactly.
So you're kind of they're all sort of starting from square one in a different way, but they're still on square one.
Yes.
So I think that the team building, they have a reputation for doing that sort of thing, which is really important. I think that's great. Okay, so we have that, those documents on the information, and again, we will bring these up as people have, you know, more interest and more questions. There's the student survey is the next item in the packet.
So with this particular survey, this is the 3rd year, so you can see 3 years' worth of data of these same questions at both the middle and the high school level. The participation rate at the middle school was strong, was lower at the high school, but I think it was still significant enough to pay attention to. Different things might jump out at different people. The middle school numbers, several of the key indicators have declined in each of the 3 years, sometimes slightly, sometimes more than 15 percentage points. But the one that jumps out to me of the most concern, students are respectful of each other. You know, the percentage of kids that agree or strongly agree with that is only 13%, and that's clearly gets at, you know, kind of a root cause of things that need addressing. And so that's what we're going to have to do. And just kind of foreshadowing, I think what you'll see with our improvement plans going forward, past the turnaround plan, but just to the reality of what we're going to actually do, I think you're going to see very specific things that administration is going to do at the middle and high school level in terms of school climate and culture, and then very specific things asked of faculty in terms of classroom management, school climate, and, you know, intervening or getting supports for kids that are, you know, are beyond the average in terms of their challenge of social and emotional learning needs. So I think we'll have some very concrete things to tell you about across that whole continuum of how to address these areas. The second, I just would, you may have any number of observations, but the other thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is the second part of each of these surveys, which is a little different. It's not really about climate, it's about what goes on in your classrooms from the perceptions of students. And we ask, on average, how often do you do the following kinds of learning in all of your academic classes combined? And I see that there's, and I think most of us see that there's a real link as well. When you take courses in things like teaching in a way that's culturally responsive, in teaching in a way that engages kids, that builds on their prior knowledge, that gives them some choice, you have less struggles in a learning environment where kids are invested, clearly. And so to the extent that that's part of our challenge, we want to be kind of monitoring that and be thinking about best practices. And so we ask questions about how often are you doing a significant amount of writing and revision? How often are you doing essentially their version of asking them about higher order thinking? How often are you working in small groups? And that number is always really high, and that kind of drove some of our improvement work for the year we're in, because we see that that's a practice that our teachers use extensively. So how can we make the most out of group work and cooperative learning? So we have that kind of data that we're collecting as well.
Any questions or comments at the moment about that particular document? Okay. And the next one we see is the turnaround plan template at a glance.
Yeah, I think last year when we were invited to receive the support of DESE in this area, I told you what the turnaround plan was all about, so I didn't repeat that for you again. But we do have an obligation to develop a turnaround plan for the coming year. In the turnaround plans, the state asks us to essentially come up with improvement plans that speak to 4 specific areas where they believe schools need to address all of those areas to improve at an accelerated rate. And so I didn't have a document that lists each of those, but within the plan itself, I highlighted those in red. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit. In a few minutes, we'll probably talk about what NEASC looks for. And what I wanted to show you in that document was that the turnaround practices are very closely aligned with the NEASC learning standards that one is supposed to address. But this one document, it says turnaround plan template at a glance. It shows you all of the type of work a school should be doing in advance of section 5, where you say these are going to be our goals for the coming year. And to a large extent, the work done under the Power Town in the 21st Century grant, it really kind of laid a good foundation for some of this work. So we were able to kind of draw from that work over the last year and a half to inform the turnaround plan. Right now, the turnaround plan has been highly driven by faculty in its conception so far and its drafting so far, led by not just curriculum coordinators, but I think other teachers as well. This is a real tricky point for us because Annie got that going, and now she's left, and Joni's walking into the middle of this draft and kind of receiving this draft. So what we need to do now is take this ambitious turnaround plan, which has 14 different goals to it, and start to talk over the next month about what's realistic. And are these priorities exactly what we want to emphasize in the coming year? Mm-hmm. The vehicle for that kind of funneling down is going to be the school's improvement plan. And so what I also provided to you is a template of that improvement plan. And so what I did was I took the 14 or 15 goals that were in the turnaround plan, and I just put them, I plugged them into the template, just so you could see in a very, not dramatic, a very concrete way, what would the coming year's school improvement plan look like if it followed everything that's in the turnaround plan? Because we've been down this road with Sheffield before, that we don't want to have a turnaround plan and then a school improvement plan. When the school year starts, we're going to have a school improvement plan. That's going to be what we look at, even though we submitted a more complex document to DESE. And so all these 14 things, it's too many, and we're going to have to think about collaboratively what is most pressing. And so that's the work we're about to engage in over the next month.
Did you just say with DESE, collaboratively figure out what's
Well,
most pressing?
collaboratively with our teachers in particular. Perhaps some community members, but what we have a team of teachers that's being paid to work on a NEASC self-study this summer. We've got curriculum coordinators that are meeting. We have a resilience schools team of teachers that's meeting, and I'm forgetting the other group. Well, there's people that have just been working on the turnaround plan itself. So we got to bring all these players together. That's what we'll be doing next.
When the state comes to you and says you have to have a turnaround plan, what do they say are the consequences if you don't? Because I'm coming in the middle of all of this.
Yeah, they have not said that there would be any consequences. Typically what it would be a loss of the support they're providing you, but they didn't provide us with any support this year. We didn't qualify for any money, or we could have if we applied, but this all happened in the wintertime, and I've been down that road before too, so we just said no thank you to the small amount of money. There's a lot of really talented people that work with the DESE teams that do this kind of work, and I'm good friends with some of them, and so I don't want to sound like I'm bashing them as a collectively or individually, but timing's important, and the amount of support you get's important, and if those things are bad and unhelpful, you have to kind of say, we're gonna make the most of this turnaround work. We're not just doing it as an exercise of compliance. There's good stuff there, but we want to go further and say, this is what we've distilled from the work we've done for you, but it's not going to be the end of the day for us.
So do they go into every school system?
No, we were invited to this because we were, I think, in the lowest 15% of high schools in the accountability system. So it comes from a serious place. It's not, it wasn't a random thing or everybody does it thing.
I see, okay.
I just wanted to clarify, I looked at the lowest 15% of level 3.
No.
No, that's overall?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And is the accountability center on MCAS scores?
Well, the accountability is largely driven by MCAS out-and-out scores and then growth scores. At the high school level, though, there's more factors than in any other place. There's graduation rates, dropout rates, there's increasingly there's attendance, and that they're going to ratchet that up even more in the coming year, the percentage of kids that don't attend regularly. So those are additional components.
Okay, thank you. I thought so, but it doesn't hurt to review. Okay, so we will be getting a turnaround plan before
A school improvement plan and a finished turnaround plan.
There you go.
As an appendix, I think, to the school improvement.
Yes.
We're trying to clear the decks for this work the next few weeks, as much as we can.
Good, thank you. Anything else on that at the moment? Again, this can come up anytime we choose.
I know.
The last document was.
Can I just tell you, the two documents right behind that template are related to the school improvement plan. I just want you to know that these are two of the several ways we reality test the school improvement plan, so that if there's an initiative, I want to know who's going to do what and when, and if if principals and their teams start to work on these initiative work plans and they feel overwhelmed, we say, well, that's a sign that you have too many initiatives, right? If you can't plan out the year with some level of specificity, it means you got too much going on. And likewise, the document after that, and we do a big, much larger version of this, it's a calendar for the year, and we say, okay, here is every opportunity you have for teachers to get professional development and collaboration. It's each of the PD days, it's each of the faculty meetings, it's each of the department meetings, and over in this last column, we add up the number of hours for the year it is. There's not very many. And that's it, that's all you've got. And so you can't have 14 large complex goals, and they're not gonna fit on this piece of paper. So that's how we use it
That's a
to
visual.
pare down what we want to do.
Goal number one, bigger pages.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is the NEASC information. And this is, again, a beginning discussion about it. And I'm glad to see in the very first paragraph it explains what the acronym stands for, because that's kind of helpful with these things. It's New England Association of Schools and Colleges.
Yes.
And this document kind of gives us an overview of what NEASC is, what their timelines are, the standards. And right now, this year is a self-evaluation, I believe, in terms of NEASC. They also have formal evaluations that occur every 10 years, maybe?
Yes.
Did I read? I did read.
Yep. The decennial accreditation, you can see that at the bottom of that timeline.
Oh, okay.
So I have a lot of thoughts, but a couple of them I think I would say to kick off this conversation. And I think I'll put all my cards on the table right up front about this. I have mixed feelings about whether or not to pursue NEASC accreditation, at least the full 10-year thing. In part because of that calendar I just showed you. We have a lot of pressing things. We have serious school culture, climate things we want to work on, equity things we want to work on. And so the more self-study and demonstrating how we're meeting somebody else's external standards, the more time you invest in that, you may not really be doing the things you really need to do. Also, it's increasingly common for high schools to not do this any longer. And I've shared with you part of a statement that was used at Frontier when they decided to no longer pursue NEASC accreditation. And there's a paragraph here that captures it pretty nicely. This accreditation originated in a day before DESE did all the things they do with us, before standards existed for performance, before strong evaluation systems existed, before special ed reviews, before all the different types of compliance work we do existed. So in some ways, by some folks, it's seen as maybe not necessary any longer. And I haven't studied it enough to say I believe that it's unnecessary, but that's out there. And in talking with people, particularly Principal Leonard before she left, she said, I understand you may not want to go forward with the NEASC reaccreditation. Her recommendation was, though, that we started a self-study process in the spring, which did involve surveying different stakeholders. I don't know how many people participated. I don't think it was a large number when it comes to the community. But that we're kind of right in the middle of that work. And right now, this summer, we have teachers who are working on these different standards and saying this is what our school looks like and this is the work we think we need to do to improve. So my preference would be that we continue that into the October visit. It's the kind of beginning visit. NEASC comes for 1 or 2 days, and they look at your self-report and your thoughts about how you want to proceed, and they give their feedback on that. And then you go on your merry way, and they don't come back for the intensive review until November of 2021. So my thought is that just what Annie seemed to suggest would be that we would continue with this work into November, see what kind of feedback we get from our NEASC partners, and then at that point, it would be a good time to say, thank you very much, that's good, we're good, we're not gonna continue, or maybe we do wanna continue. So those are my initial thoughts at this time about it.
I do remember hearing last time, I was not teaching at the high school level, but I remember hearing from staff members how much time it took to prepare for the official accreditation visit, which sometimes I think now is time that we as a district might prefer to spend on other things in the way that we want them. It might even be some of the same areas, but it might be the way that we would like to spend our time and our staff would like to spend their time. That occurred to me as I was looking this over, because I do remember hearing that about all the time that was spent. Not that it isn't valuable, but if something else is more valuable.
Exactly.
We're always in that situation as a school committee and as a district. What is the most valuable? What do we need right now the most? And how can we accomplish that? And I think that's a good thing to think of when you're making decisions. Cassie?
Yeah, I mean, I kept thinking, I know you just mentioned that, you reached out to some stakeholders, and I don't know who that was, but it might be worth it because, the NEASC accreditation process can be time-consuming for teachers, and it's not always bad. I mean, there's some good learning that comes from it. But I just wonder, maybe test the waters. There's a lot of change happening this year for them, and I know that can be scary as well. So then on top of it, we say, okay, well, meet the new administration and then do this and then and by the way, we need you to do this for NEASC. So I just think kind of being gentle in that sense. I definitely think moving forward, it's good to, go to that first meeting and decide then, because I'm sure I know there's teachers that really get involved in this and want to dedicate their time to it. And I'm not talking about in our school specifically, but there are some teachers that they look forward to this stuff. So maybe testing the water there to kind of gauge climate.
Teresa?
Also, in view of the whole school choice law, I think at one point the accreditation was a determining factor, or one of the things that parents looked for. I don't know if that's still the case, and I think that's something that should be noted as well, that, like you say, there's so much information that used to just be in that accreditation that is out there for parents, and see what the other areas' schools.
A lot of them, I'm sorry.
Well, no, but to see when you have a parent looking at coming here or going to an area school, are they going to look for that accreditation because X, Y, and Z schools have done it? And so they know basically that they're on, or they think they're on the same page, and then you have us who does not do it. What does that mean, kind of thing? So I think that's a factor because of the school choice that should be considered, because you're trying to get all the kids here.
So we definitely want to be sensitive to, we don't want to be perceived as not having sufficient rigor, or that we don't have enough resources to do things well. So that is a concern. What I can come back with, I didn't have it today, but several of the area school districts have already made this decision to no longer do it. So, in fact, I could just say, I know the schools of the frontier to the south, where we lose more students than anywhere else, they don't participate any longer. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mike?
The first time we went through it, I don't remember how long it was ago, it doesn't matter, probably 15 years, but at the time, the common wisdom was you couldn't get into college if you had a diploma from a school that wasn't accredited, and that has changed significantly. But that's something that we can look into. We can talk to colleges, admissions people, and see, or our own guidance people. I imagine they have the same information. So we can be double checking these issues and seeing that we've put other things in place to that aren't as expensive and time-consuming if that proves to be a real issue. And then that's what I've heard. Again, haven't been part of it, so I couldn't say, but there's, oh, here we go, a year-long thing. So, look forward to your next report on that.
Okay.
Anyone else have a question or comment on that for now? No? Okay, hearing none. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes for June 11th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jody. Mike moved, Heather seconded.
It's just seemed a little bit, like really focused on like what Mike, but I didn't know if what you
No.
read, if you wanted to add that.
No, this is the other one.
Oh,
These
the
are
other one,
official
sorry.
ones here. That other one
I have
is
them in the
not
opposite
on our
order here.
list to
Okay, so
approve,
that'll be the
so I
next
figured
time.
we wouldn't vote for it this time because I didn't put it on the agenda.
Okay, so that'll be next time. Okay. Sorry, I have them in mixed order right here in front of me.
That's okay. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, looks unanimous.
Well, sit down.
I'm sorry, what? No. Unanimous of who's
So
here.
moved.
And therefore, agenda request, please let us know, but our next meeting is not going to be until August 13th, which is because we moved around our order of meetings in the summer, and therefore have a nice vacation, or no, staycation, as it were, whatever. So, next meeting, August 13th, this room, 6:30 p.m.
To adjourn.
Yes,
Turned off the air conditioner when he left.
motion to adjourn?
Second?
Okay, Mike motion to adjourn and Heather seconded. All those in favor? Thank you all. A lot of paper we have to